Welcome to This Week in Plymouth. I'm Donna Rodriguez, your host, and I'm joined by Town Manager Derek Brindisi. Today is July 11th, and thank you for joining us. Thank you for being here, Derek.
Thank you. Happy to be back again.
And as always, there's a lot to talk about for the town. Now, I'd like to start off by going back a little bit. Right around town meeting, when there was discussion about the potential purchase of land for a shared public safety building, there was a lot of conversation through that special town meeting about what lands the town owns and properties that might even be available for sale. I know there's been some work on that recently. Would you like to give us an update?
Yeah, that's a great question. This item you bring up this afternoon has been getting a lot of attention, not just with the select board, but a lot of folks in the community. COPC members are very interested in trying to understand all the different properties the town owns and which one of those properties we could sell for any purpose. And it's very complex. It's not as easy as people think. Our assistant town manager, Brad Brothers, he received a database from our assessing department. It has over 1,200 lines in it.
Of owned property?
The town-owned property,
Wow.
but there's no descriptors. So a lot of these parcels of land will just have the parcel ID. Doesn't give you the address, doesn't say what the property is to be used for, it just said it's owned by the town. So it's going to take us, I would say, probably the better part of 12 months or even longer to go through each one of those 1,200 lines to determine what the current purpose or use of that land is and whether or not we can go ahead and sell that property.
Or develop on it.
Or develop it, right.
Now, how are you going to be tracking that? Will that all be in a database? Are there ways that the public or interested people could find out the progress? Yeah,
so, part of my analysis of town business is that a lot of the things that we do in town government is very archaic. And so I think it's going to take us a lot of upfront work to identify those parcels and then put descriptors on those. But we are working with the Inspectional Services Department. They have an e-permitting system that they're currently trying to implement. And then we're also working with our archivists on a Laserfiche program that will tie together every parcel in the community, so both public and private, with descriptors and with maps and pictures, so that we could eventually, over time, point to each one of those parcels and look at it and identify what the current use is. But that's a long ways away. I mean, right now we're dealing with working with an Excel spreadsheet that quite frankly probably hasn't been looked at in many years. So we'll go through that line by line, but in the interim, there are some properties we do know about that we're going to start working with on identifying a marketing firm to help us look at these properties and determine what would be the best value for those properties.
So the goal would be to sell some of the properties for use for general funds, or is it for specific projects like a new fire station?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. So when we sell this property, it goes into a special account. So it doesn't go into the general revenue. And so in order for us to use this money for a future purpose like a fire station, we would have to go back to town meeting and ask town meeting's permission to go ahead and appropriate those funds for a specific purpose. So again, there's a lot of checks and balances in one, how we sell the property, and then two, how we use the proceeds from the sale of that property.
So would your office or the select board need to go before town meeting even to have approval to sell these properties, or would it just be after they're sold how to use the funds?
So again, each one of those properties will have to make that determination. But the process is, the standard process is that in order for the select board to sell a piece of land, they have to seek authority through town meeting.
Okay.
There are some pieces of property we already know that we're ready to sell. Like, for example, the water barn on Long Pond Road is one that always comes to mind. People talk a lot about the sale of that property. I've talked to some former board members who have told me that back in 2010, they were talking about selling that old water barn. So those pieces of land, we've already gone to town meeting. The select board already has the authority to either sell, lease, or transfer that property. So in those instances, we'll just go ahead, we'll put it out through the public bidding process and sell that property.
Okay, so some sales will start currently, and that funding will be put aside to ultimately be decided upon by select board and town meeting as to where the funding would go. But in the meantime, that process has already started for evaluating all of those parcels.
Yeah, so the evaluation process has started. There are 3 pieces of land, though, that have already risen to the top. So there's this piece of property on Long Pond Road, which I think is a little more than 2 acres of land, which is the old water barn. That's a piece of property that's in the high rent district. It's right on, it's commercially zoned, and we think that we could get a reasonable purchase price for that property. We have 2 other properties: the old school administration building on South Meadow Road. Again, another high value property. We think that we could get a strong purchase price. And then there's also the old Station 7
In North Plymouth.
In North Plymouth that had gone out once to bid. And I want to say that we had a bid price around $200,000. The prospective buyer actually rescinded their bid offer when they found out that piece of land was contaminated with PFAS contamination. So those are the 3 pieces of parcels that we know that we could put out immediately. We know there's been many discussions in the past about selling those 3 pieces of land. But what the board has asked us to do first is they want us to engage a marketing firm. They feel that if we just put it out through the public procurement process, we won't be able to receive the full amount of what we think maybe a developer may be willing to pay for. So Brad Brothers, again, our assistant town manager, he's going to be trying to identify a marketing firm, a real estate firm that can help us get the most money for those parcels.
Excellent. And you'll be giving updates through select board reports as well as perhaps in the show as well.
Yeah, as we progress, we'll certainly talk about it with the select board, because eventually what we will do is once we get a better sense of what we should put that property out to bid for, and that's the other thing, we just can't sell it to a developer, we have to put it out to bid. And so we want to get in the range of like what would be a good bid price. So once we get that number, we'll be going back to the select board, we'll be briefing them on what our recommendation would be to put some of these properties out to bid.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you so much for the update. I appreciate it. And along with the options for really looking at the diverse ways in which the town can receive funding, I know that one of the staff at Town Hall is really in charge of grant writing now, and that's been really successful. Tiffany Park is working on grant writing with the town, and you've got a couple of announcements just for some recent grant awards. Would you like to share those with us? Yeah,
so as you pointed out, Tiffany Park, she's the town's first grant writer. The board had wisdom about a year ago to fund a position that is specifically just focused on writing grants. And Tiffany has been in a transition period when she took over that because she was still doing her former job, but she's now solely focused on 100% of her time on writing grants. And to your point, just this last week alone, we had announced 2 new grant awards the town received. So we received a grant for $100,000 through the Mass Trails grant, and this is a grant that's going to allow us to complete the Reil trail, which begins at Nelson Park, that goes all the way up to Cottage. There are a couple of intersections, one on Nelson and Lothrop, that needed to be completed. So this $100,000 is going to allow us give us the construction dollars to complete that. So we'll have a full trail again from Nelson all the way up to Cottage.
That's fantastic. It's such a popular trail for visitors and residents alike.
Oh, it's very popular. In fact, I go there all the time myself, and I know exactly this little section that wasn't completed. So again, this money will be put to great use, and that is just $100,000 that we don't have to burden our taxpayers with.
And there's also funding coming in from the state, another grant for actually the Mass Trails grant, which would you like to tell us a little more about that? Yeah,
so the other one is the Mass DOT Shared Streets and Spaces one, which is about $270,000. Again, the town just received, and I like this grant in particular because I'm big on streets and sidewalks. Our residents, that's what they drive on every day. That's what they walk on. We know more and more in today's day and age that communities really want pedestrian-friendly, vibrant neighborhoods, and these types of grants help us get a little bit closer to that. So this is a shared streets grant. So shared streets, in essence, really, so folks that aren't aware, it's actually kind of a federal initiative that requires that when we build new streets that it can provide for pedestrian access,
Bicycle.
and vehicles share the same roadway. So you see oftentimes now on our roadways these little bicycle lanes, and they're marked off with bicycles, and so it just alerts especially our drivers that this is a shared street and it's supposed to accommodate all types of transportation.
And that started years ago in Plymouth. It's really exciting to see use of grant money and other options to be able to continue that and expand it across the town.
Yeah, no, and again, and this is something we're going to continue to push for. We get money every year through the Chapter 90 program to put towards streets and sidewalks, but these additional dollars, it'll help us get there a little bit further.
Now, you've talked a lot with us since you've come back to town about really reviewing town government, reviewing for efficiencies, reviewing for ensuring that town government and town hall is meeting the needs of the residents. And part of that has actually been creating or adjusting a couple of positions within town. And we're going to have two guests on today who are new to town hall. Would you like to tell us a little bit about their roles before we introduce them?
Yeah, so I'm really excited to talk to these two gentlemen today. So Mark Reil, who's our climate resiliency and
That's a tough word.
sustainability planner. It is. It's a tough
It's a big job
position.
and a big job.
And then Anthony Senesi is the new assistant to the select board and town manager. So again, we'll talk to them directly about their positions, but I'm really excited to have them on board because Mark will start this new initiative here in town, and then Anthony's kind of going to take on an old position, but with new roles.
And increased communications, I understand.
That's right.
Excellent.
That's right.
So we're going to do something a little different in this episode. We're going to take a brief break, and then we're going to come back, and you're going to be taking over the hosting position to be able to interview both Mark and Anthony. So we invite you to please stay tuned to This Week in Plymouth, and you'll be right back with your host, Eric Brindisi.
Welcome back to This Week in Plymouth. I am your host, Derek Brindisi, Town Manager, and today is my first day hosting. Normally we'll have Donna here, and her and I go back and forth and ask a number of questions, and I try to provide the facts to what's going on in Plymouth. But this afternoon, I have the two gentlemen to my left, Anthony Senesi and Mark Reil, two of our newest fourth floor employees for the Town of Plymouth. And so I wanted them both to come here this afternoon because your jobs are very unique to the town, and I think they're very important. So I thought it would be a good opportunity for folks to get to see who you are. They can put a name to the face and call you when they need to at some point. So I'll start with Anthony. Anthony, so your position has been a traditional position here in town. It's the assistant to the select board and town manager. Can you just describe to folks a little bit of where you came from and how you landed here in Plymouth?
Yeah, absolutely. So approximately about 3 years or so ago, I worked at the Central Massachusetts Regional Planning Commission, or CMRPC for short. That is a regional planning agency, and so what essentially is a regional planning agency, it is kind of a tool for different municipalities, cities, and towns to utilize for planning efforts across various different disciplines, open space, various different things. And so I was the communications and community liaison, so I was working with various planning boards, select boards, zoning boards of appeals, various different groups, and also residents and members of the public as well. And then I was working with a lot of communication efforts, organizing different newsletters, social media, things of that nature. I kind of transitioned. I really wanted to work in a municipality, kind of on the ground in some ways. So I started a position in the town of Weston, working as the assistant to the town manager. And that role was very multifaceted. I was working directly with the select board and the town manager to kind of support them in their role, whether it be setting the agendas, taking minutes, answering questions from members of the public, doing a lot of the direct communication efforts as well, whether it be through social media, managing the website, writing the annual town report or comprising the annual town report. It was very multifaceted just because it was it's a fairly small town, about 13,000 residents. So when it comes to efficiencies and when it comes to having many hats, that was the role I had. And now recently I started this position in Plymouth. I'm very excited. It's a lot of the same traditional administrative roles and capacities, but I'm looking forward to working regarding communication efforts, social media, keeping things consistent, clear, articulate, and concise for members of the public as well.
So let's stay with that for a minute. Especially your experience at CMRPC, you mentioned working with various boards and committees, ZBAs, municipalities, and given your role, I would say your dual role now here in Plymouth, because the position that you're taking over was more traditional, working on the boards and committees, supporting the select board with the meeting agenda and the meeting minutes. And during my first 2 months here, what I thought was a weakness coming out of town hall was the inability to convey information and facts. And so we've been able to take your position and evolve it so it has more of a communications effort on it. Can you just kind of describe, at least, I know you've only been here for a week, but really what you're thinking about, taking us into the 21st century as far as engaging the community?
It's just, it has to be multifaceted for sure. With Plymouth being a fairly large municipality, a fairly large town in Massachusetts, there's a lot of communication. There's a lot of various pieces of information that need to be released to the public in a clear and concise way that is factual and that comes from the town specifically. So this can range from direct email blasts to our e-subscribers on the website. I highly recommend, if you haven't already, definitely subscribe to some of those emails, because that's where you get the direct source of information from the town, and it's factual in that way too. So social media also has an important element too. I'd like to work on branding when it comes to making sure that the communication that comes out from the town of Plymouth is professional and very and factual for sure. This also relates to the website as well. I'm looking forward to perhaps working with other staff members and community members regarding the website. It really, when it comes to press releases too, making connections in that way. And then it also really ties down to, specifically the people that you work for, which are the residents and the community members of Plymouth. And that's also something I'm really looking forward to get feedback, to see what we can improve upon when it comes to how we relay information as well.
Well, that's very helpful, because just your first week here, we released 2 press releases on the 2 grants that we talked about earlier in this segment. So I can guarantee you that we'll be seeing a lot more of you in the future, because there's a lot of work that we need to do when we talk about communication. So thank you for joining us. We'll kind of move over to Mark over here. He's been really quiet for the first 5 minutes of
listening intently.
Yeah, exactly. So, Mark, your position is new. This was the wisdom of the board. They recognize everything that's happened globally with climate change, and really wanted to put some resources behind focusing on climate change. So, your position is Climate Resiliency and Sustainability Planner. So before we ask you the really tough questions about what your vision is for the position, can you just give folks kind of a background of where you've come from and some of your experiences?
Definitely. So I'm coming directly from the Massachusetts Department of Fish and Game. I was the Director of Legislative Affairs there. So really that role touched upon all of the different tasks and mission of the department. So very conservation focused, climate focused work that is being done on habitat management, land preservation, dam removals, some coastal protections, endangered species protections. So it's very broad, and I really have had a long passion for conservation. Growing up in a quite rural community, was always out in the woods, fishing, just experiencing nature. And so over the years, I've always tried to incorporate that passion into whatever job that I am doing. I previously worked in the state Senate, was very much exposed to the many grant programs and other programs that were established by the legislature in Massachusetts. And even throughout those two roles, I've served in a municipal capacity. Also previously was a Green Communities program manager, so I'm familiar with the Green Communities project program in Massachusetts. And so coming to Plymouth, I've really been able to, again, bring my passion for conservation efforts and combine them with a position that really is going to be able to help Plymouth move forward on climate resiliency and sustainability efforts.
Well, it's interesting because I know, we had the chance to meet on a couple different occasions, and aside of your strong environmental background, one thing I always appreciated with your experience is that you were the legislative director up at Fish and Game, and so just helping us navigate the red tape and the bureaucracy at the state level, we're going to be pulling on you just for that alone. So we appreciate you being here. But when we think about environmental issues here in Plymouth, I think it's because we're a coastal community, we have already had resources set in that area. So, under David Gould's leadership, he's the director of Marine and Environmental Affairs. They've done a lot of work in this area. And then Patrick Farrer is our energy officer. So, when I look at it, we seem like we kind of have a good framework to begin this conversation. And I know in your first week you've had a small opportunity to engage some of our staff to learn more of what they're doing. But at the same time, I also feel like you're really going to blaze your own trails when it comes to this. Like the slate is clean. So have you thought about where you see this work going in the future?
I have. I really have been able to see in this first week or so that I've been in this role how much work has been happening on these efforts, and it's really pretty impressive. I see this role as being more of a coordinating role, not only within the government of town, but with the business community and residents as well, to really keep these issues at the forefront and continue those conversations, because climate resiliency and sustainability applies to pretty much every town department. And so every project that comes in front of the select board or planning board, really there's so many of these little aspects that really add up to moving the community forward on these climate resiliency and sustainability issues. So I really see my role as just kind of reminding folks to keep these things in mind, to focus on making advances when it comes to preparing for climate change and for improving sustainability efforts. And I think it's important to also note that there's an economic benefit to making these changes. It's a twofold situation when you can save the community financially in the short term and the long term. And sure, there's going to be some changes and it's going to be different, but these are things that are being done across the country and we're seeing that they are working. So bringing those here to Plymouth, it's going to be a really great benefit to the community.
Yeah, and it's, as you point out, it's important work. This is something that we have, climate change is happening. We recognize that. We're already seeing that in extreme weather events. And so to have a person whose focus every single day is to put us in a position for not 10 years down the road, but like 50 years down the road, like protecting our community against sea level rise and things of that nature is extremely important. So again, thank you for taking that leadership role, because I know you have a lot of work ahead of you. But unfortunately, we're wrapping up. I thank you both for coming. I'm sure the community appreciates you being here, and you guys will be back. I can guarantee you as projects come up. And,
absolutely.
Everyone can call Anthony if they have questions or concerns. He's at the front desk. But I want to thank everybody for watching This Week in Plymouth. Any questions, like I've always said in the past, please email me directly at dbrindisi@plymouth-ma.gov. If you're just looking for information, always go to our website. Anthony's working on our website and redesigning that website in the future. And then every Tuesday night, I always talk to the board about the things that are happening each and every week through my town manager's report. So you can always find information there as well. So again, thank you both for coming, and we'll see you all next week. Thank you.